Hey, welcome to Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. We are Josh and Laura, and today we are going to be discussing weaponized incompetence. So grab your English tea or your IPA and join us as we spend the rest of this episode launching our incompetencies at each other left and right. This is Skeptic Hangout. Weaponized incompetence. That's got to be one of the hardest words to say in an introduction. That is hard. Weaponized incompetence.
Were you hoping that maybe I would take over for you and say the incompetence so that you wouldn't have to do it? Because isn't that how
You're far
weaponized
more competent with your enunciations. You should go ahead and do it.
Yeah. This is
Say
like
it.
incompetence. Yeah. See, you just
Say
got me.
weaponized incompetence.
Okay, I'm not your fucking monkey here, Laura. I'll say the
This
words
is
I
not a,
want
this is
to.
not a dom sub relationship. I need to like back off a step.
Okay. Well, from my knowledge of weaponized incompetence, this seems to be something that I've found out a lot through sitcoms. I think this is something that came about through Everybody Loves Raymond, which is not the greatest show, but I had a thing for Patricia Heaton, but that's not a thing that
No
matters on
judgment.
this episode right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Ray would eventually found out that if he did something bad, eventually his wife would just take over and he wouldn't have to do it again. So that was where my knowledge of weaponized incompetence is sometimes you just suck at something, but weaponizing your incompetence is when you suck at something enough where you can get completely taken off of this kind of chore or whatever you don't want to do. People thought I was doing this when I worked in retail and did a horrible job at folding clothes and shit. I had one of my managers like, "You're not a folding guy. You can't fold anything because everything you fold looks like
looks like
garbage."
looks like some 2-year-old went by and like sampled everything.
Yeah, but that was me legitimately trying. I wasn't doing weaponized incompetence. That was pure incompetence. That was legit. But like some people, at least from my idea of weaponized incompetence, and maybe you'll come with something that wasn't from a sitcom and maybe be a little less surface level, is just where you look like you're putting in an effort and then you go, "Gosh, I'm so bad at this. You're so much better at this than me." And then they end up taking the job over and there's probably a little bit of resentment. But if you do it to the right people, the resentment doesn't matter. Don't do it to your wife or your spouse. Do it to coworkers.
Well, I'm really impressed at how much you knew about it because this was another one of those topics that I didn't know about until today. And I saw a meme for it. And it was funny. It was like this woman bitching at work. And she's like, "Oh, my husband is so terrible at folding all the clothes. So now I have to do all the laundry all the time." Right. And then it like snaps to the mail. And it's some little comic about how the mail's doing it on purpose to get out of folding the clothes and stuff like that. And it was funny because I was like, I had more problem with the comic with the woman gossiping and bitching about her husband at work instead of communicating with him, right? Than I did about the incompetence. But they're both shitty things, right? Like, but I was
I
like,
don't agree with you actually, because I do think that if your spouse or somebody that you care about or whoever is being the problem in your life, I do think there should be somebody that you can vent to. Eventually you probably should vent to the spouse, but I feel like getting the heat off of that on your friends and like throw your spouse under
no,
the
vent
bus
to
with your
your
friends.
friends. Don't vent at work like to your coworkers. Like,
Hey,
I don't
a
know.
lot of
Or
my
do it.
friends
Go ahead and
a,
do it.
a lot of
I
my friends were former coworkers. My
okay.
co-host on Bloody Good Film Podcast. I worked with them for like 5 years in retail.
Oh,
So
nice. I didn't
like,
know that.
there's you vent to whoever you can. And I do think venting to somebody and like about especially something as innocuous as like clothes or something where you're getting a little bit worked up about something that doesn't matter that much because clothes doesn't need to be
Yeah.
folded nicely. Just stuff it in the fucking drawers. But
I just think I have to like I want you to go on, but I have to just interrupt really quick because we were just talking about toxic monogamy in the previous relationship or the previous relationship where I'm all
previous
screwed up.
episode.
In the previous episode, we were talking about toxic relationships. And one of the things that we talked about was building up those resentments, right? And so like, that's what the problem that I had with it was like the getting pissed off and getting resentful of it. It's like, but you're actually folding the clothes for him. You're like doing the thing that you resent doing, building the resentment. So yeah, I totally agree with you. If you need to vent or gossip or talk about your spouse or anybody, like do it. Like
Yeah,
I
that way when you actually do confront them, because you should confront them about it,
yeah,
you're coming at them from
yeah.
like a calm angle instead of like at a level 10.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Have you ever seen anyone get like riled up by talking to their friends though? They're like, "Oh, this very minor thing happened." By the time they're done with I keep saying relationship. By the time they're done with the conversation, they're like all riled up and fired up and like even more pissed off than before. Like I don't know. It
Well,
depends.
it depends on how good of a friend you have to vent to, because they should be acknowledging that you're going through shit. Maybe give you a little shit for overreacting about something as stupid
Good,
as
yeah.
fucking laundry. So like they can acknowledge that you're right and also give you a little bit of shit for getting crazy over something that really doesn't fucking matter. And then you hear that and then come in a little bit more calm, as long as the calmness is earned. Maybe they're like really bad at like parking the car and they're driving through the garage all the time. Like,
Oh
ooh, I can't.
man, that's
That
yeah.
might be the point where you blow your lid. I'm trying to think of like, and I can't think of any times where it's not innocuous with the shit. I lost the topic.
The
So
incompetence, weaponized incompetence.
I can't think of a time where weaponizing confidence isn't something that's kind of innocuous, because I've never heard of it used towards anything like that's a big fucking deal. Lots of times there's especially if you're going, you seem to be tending towards relationships again because you keep saying the word. But if it's in that, I think the majority of the time when you can use weaponized incompetence is in relationships, although it can be work relationships. But like that, this can also be like sometimes where you find your strengths, and like they're doing this because this is not an area that they give a fuck about, but maybe they're good at like the finances or something like that, so they're taking their strengths to somewhere else and they just don't want to do fucking laundry. And as long as you're okay with doing the laundry and they're okay with that, cool. If you're not okay with that, make a deal about it, but it's don't blow your fucking lid about it.
See, that is where weaponized incompetence has to have some sort of level or whatever where it becomes that, right? Because like I have that with my husband where it's like he's the IT guy. He works with computers for a living. That's what he does. And I knew more about computers when we first started dating than I do now because I don't need to know. And like I one could easily say that's weaponized incompetence because I'm like, oh, honey, will you like unlock my cell phone for me? Like something stupid that I could do on my own. But I've allowed myself that like sort of I'm not the person who does this. And then, but I handle other things, like you said, I handle the finances and I'm really smart with the budgeting and the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And I take a lot of that off his hands so that he doesn't have to use that brain power to worry over those things, which he could do. Right. So either one of us could do either one of those tasks. But there's this sort of sense of like, oh, she's really good with money. And well, he's really good with computers and it works. Right. So you're right. There's this kind of like, is it an arrangement that works or is it, I'm being subversive and manipulating my wife into doing something by pretending to be bad at it.
I'd say it's definitely an immature way of setting up the household roles or whatever. It's definitely the less mature way, but like maybe like figure out why they're doing that, and there could be like a good
Yeah.
reason that's just not the kind of thing for them. And I'm not saying that there are still points where it's bad, like if they're using weaponized incompetence for like maybe to put somebody into like gender roles in the household or something like that.
Ooh,
That might
interesting.
be where they're crossing a line, like, oh, I can't cook dinner, you're so
That's
much
a
better at
woman's
than me. Yeah,
job.
well,
Yeah.
you can do that without actually having to say the
Without
toxic
saying it,
thing
but that's
out
what's
loud. And
being
that's where the
thought is, yeah.
yeah, that's where the toxic incompetence may come in. Or did we say toxic incompetence? This is a heavy. This is a
We should not
hard.
have done this back to back with toxic monogamy, not to be construed with toxic masculinity. All these terms become like a jumble after a
Yeah,
while. And just for
yeah.
the audience, we film these back to back and then release them 1 week at a time. So sometimes it's difficult to switch gears.
Yeah,
But
if you're being incompetent on purpose, that's where it can be shitty. Is if you're trying to get them into gender roles or something like that that they're not into, and sometimes you just gotta do the fucking shit. And it's not something that I think you should blow your lid off right away, because maybe they actually are stupid and you're just assuming that they're really bad at it. People think that folding shirts is a really fucking easy thing to do and make look nice. It's not. It does not come easily to everybody. Sometimes people are just better at it. So like
Right.
so don't go assuming that it's them weaponizing incompetence. That's what the word was. It was weaponizing. Uh don't assume that they're doing that, but and it might be impossible because you can't thought police yourself, but like give them a chance or find out what they can actually do. But if suddenly you're doing fucking everything in the household, that's when they weaponize it to the point of they're just being a fucking dick.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on something that I was going to get to later, and that's the concept of if we're going to talk about weaponizing incompetence in terms of how do we recognize it, what do we do with it in our own lives and stuff like that, the one thing that I would say is super important is to not assume it first thing, right? Like, oh, he's bad at folding clothes or she's bad at balancing the checkbook, so they're purposely being done. Like, I know she's smarter than that. Like, I've seen her do smart-ish things, so she should be able to do math, and like she's definitely doing this on purpose. Or I've seen him like organize his whatever, and I know that he can do it with clothes. It's this sort of like jump to conclusion that like somebody is being deliberately incompetent in order to get out of doing something versus legitimately incompetent or not good at it, like what you were saying. Like, I think there needs to be that, like, unless there's a good reason to believe otherwise, there needs to be that sort of reasonable doubt that the person might be going through something else, right?
And
Especially
then
if you're talking about not just in the household, but like at work, like weaponized competence at work, someone underperforming a task, like don't assume that they're doing it just to get out of it unless there's a reason to believe that.
well, within the household, it's more something that you can deal with, and you can probably notice the problems a little bit better.
Yeah.
Uh, Within work, I think you're pushing boundaries on what you can get away with if you're weaponizing incompetence. I was talking about working retail. Job I'm at right now, I can't see weaponizing incompetence because it'll make me look pretty bad. But then again, I have dealt with people that I feel they're too stupid. They nobody can be as stupid as some of the people that I've helped out with computer things, and I'm not in IT. And like the amount of times I've had to help people out with computer things that seem incredibly simple, uh, makes me almost feel like they could be weaponizing incompetence there because especially when I've helped them out with the same thing over and over again, it's like,
Mm.
do you really need the help or do you just want the help? Like you don't want to have to deal with it.
Dude,
Like
that's
oh,
a
go ahead.
really good question, because you're talking about being at work and stuff, and I've had the same situation, not just at work, but like just with helping people in various situations, but outside of the household, where it's like you show them something and they just don't quite get it, or you explain it, and the next time that they need to have it explained again. So there's uh, like, I wonder how you could even draw the line, but like there's these other things that could be going on. Like they could just legitimately have a hard time grasping the concept, right? But then there's also this, is there a difference between weaponized incompetence and stubborn incompetence? And I just made that up on the spot, but like the idea of the person who they're not being deliberately incompetent in order to get out of doing a task, but they have some sort of stubborn, like, I knew people who were like, I will not have a smartphone, period, right? Or I will not learn how to use these word processing systems, like, period. And it was more of a, I don't want to adapt, it makes me uncomfortable, it makes me nervous, I
Oh, I
don't.
definitely have seen that at work.
And it's different because like I think that, how would I put it, I think the underlying issues there are different. Like I think the outcome might be the same, where they're relying on someone else to do something for them and they're refusing to get better at something, but I think the intentions are different.
Yeah, but then again, intentions in this situation don't matter as much. Actually, I'd
Right.
say with weaponized and like just stubborn, there's really isn't any difference because they're both negative aspects
The
into it.
outcome
Like,
is the same. Yeah.
well, and neither of those, like, if you're actually incompetent, maybe you gotta lose the fucking job, but at least you're trying, and I don't hate you. But
Yeah.
if you're too stubborn to learn something that you need to learn, uh, that's well. Also, you should lose your fucking job on that. And there's some people that I've worked with before, and I'm like, how the fuck do you have this job when you're like anytime any new system came out, they would freak out about it and like almost like throw a tantrum about it, and like this is that stubborn incompetence thing. Like they're freaking out about it before they've even had time to learn the new system and see whether or not it works. Like
Yeah.
that I'd say that's not weaponizing, that's just like being an ass. So maybe that, but both of them come in the same round of like, it still makes my job harder to do
Oh,
if my
totally.
coworkers do it. It's exactly the same way. Just one of them like, oh, I think they're stupid, another one I think they're an ass. And I don't know if you want to look like if you prefer to look like a dumbass or be look stupid or look like an ass in a work environment. Both of those are negative things that most people don't look fondly upon.
I don't know. I'm kind of sensitive in that regard because I do think that a person's intelligence in the moment is something that they can't help and don't have as much control over, whereas their attitude or approach to something they have a lot more control over. And I'm not saying a person who has low intelligence couldn't do things to become more intelligent, but if it is just a matter of actual incompetence in the moment, like at that time, that might not be something that they can help. So when you say like, do you want to look stupid or do you want to look like an asshole? Like, I'm almost like, yeah, but I don't think that person who's coming off as stupid wants to look stupid. Like, oh, I want to look
Well,
stupid,
no, but the thing
but
is, if they're weaponizing it, they're making themselves look
look
incompetent, and they are
stupid.
going for the
Yeah,
stupid one. I'm not talking about actually
yeah.
incompetent people. Those are lovable idiots, and I'm okay with them. But the people that are faking it, that then they're just like they're choosing between looking stupid or looking like an ass. So like that's
I
where
get
I'm
what you're
talking about.
saying. You're talking about when you're using it as a manipulation technique. Because I
Yes,
was like about to take issue with it, and I was like, wait. No, I understand that for sure. There's definitely a level of risk you take when you're going to do that. And I think a lot of times when I've seen it myself, when people are doing those things on purpose, they really just don't give a fuck how they're portrayed. They're like, it's the outcome that I'm going for. Like, I don't give a shit. But the one thing that you said about like the difference between weaponized incompetence and sort of that stubborn, I've never learned this before and I don't want to for whatever reason. I think the only difference I would see is not in the outcome because it kind of sucks both ways, is in the approach. Like if someone was just being like weaponizing incompetence, especially in the workplace, there could be this level of your job's on the line. So I understand that I've had to explain this to you so many times, or you're acting like you're bad at it, so I have to do it. But if this happens too much more often, you're losing your job, right? Like this,
exactly.
you can be held accountable for that. But if it's like sort of like this stubborn, like there's an anxiety there or a lack of familiarity, or like I don't pick up new things, I would say it's a different approach. It's sitting down with that person and saying, hey, I know this is a pain in the ass. And like it's a pain in the ass for both of us when I keep having to show you over and over again. But if we can get to the point where it's familiar for you, or if we can get to the point where you're not so intimidated by this, then it's actually gonna be easier for you in the long run too, because we don't have to keep doing this, and it's going to be a lot of stress off your back too. And to me, it's just a different conversation. It's like the outcome is the same. How I would treat that person would
Oh
be
yeah,
different.
like
But
I don't think I've ever like tried to say somebody was weaponizing incompetence or like plain stupid, because I never use the word
right,
weaponizing and the two words together, weaponizing and
they're
incompetency
too
for
hard to
today.
say.
I it's not a term that I've been familiar with, but I've kind of like understood the idea of. But I'm I don't pretend to be a mind reader, so I'm not gonna call somebody out on that, especially at work, because that can like turn on you. But like
Oh, big time.
if I'm noticing problems all the time and they are using weaponized incompetence, it's gonna kick them in the ass eventually. So like, it's not a tool that I recommend people using all that often. But if they're again using this the stubbornness, then yeah, fuck those people. Those people are terrible to work with, and like. The few times like I've almost lost my cool at work were when I've had these stubborn, incompetent people that are like, I've figured out the system. You just gotta like it's gotten more difficult. It's
Yes.
gotten more difficult since we started working remotely, and I can't
Right.
just like take over somebody's computer and get what I need. I have to
Right.
like call them over, and they're fighting me every step of the way. Like, no, I know what I'm talking about. I've figured this out, even though you've been using this system longer than me. I figured this out myself, and I'm gonna walk you through doing exactly what I need you to do. And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. 45 frustrating minutes later, it worked the way I said it. It could have been done in five
Yeah.
minutes.
Yep. Yep. That's really interesting. Oh, so when we chose this topic, did you have any, because you said a couple times like I wouldn't use the word weaponized or whatever. I took issue a little bit with the word weaponized, but as we're talking more and more about it, I'm beginning to see how like actually that kind of does apply
It's
because the harm it
manipulative.
does to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at first I was like, weaponizing is to me something that causes like you said the word ahead of me, you said the word harm, right? And I was like, it seems pretty innocuous when a guy's just being a dickhead and being like, oh, I'm bad at laundry. Like I wouldn't deal with that. Like I would probably have different conversations with them than like the oh fine, I'll just do it for you. But
I like you said my example that, and I said I legitimately was bad at laundry, and you had to
no,
go, oh,
it's
I'm
I'm
bad at
sorry, no, it's
laundry.
because of the comic that I read earlier. I no, you can be bad at folding shirts. I'm
That was
okay
a
with
good me
that. I don't
impression, by
care.
the way.
But I know the audience isn't even able to tell which one of us was talking. No, but I was referring to the comic because that was the example that the woman gave was that like, oh, my husband is so terrible at folding laundry, blah blah blah. But but I really didn't like the term weaponized just thinking about it until we had this discussion and I started to be able to kind of engage with what the outcome is, right? Because in the beginning, watching that comic, it's like, oh, okay, there are two people that are really not they're manipulating each other and they're not getting along and they're not communicating well and like that's a shitty relationship. So like I
Yeah.
don't like the wife or the man in this situation. I think they're both like on bad grounds with each other. But then the more and more you and I talk about it, the more it's like, no, actually, it can have some pretty negative impacts. Like if you're doing it to manipulate someone to get away from doing certain responsibilities, and then you now have this like think about the everybody loves Raymond thing where it's like, I'm just gonna sit back and watch football because she's gonna do all the chores because I've proven I'm bad at them. Like that's shitty.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I was agreeing with the wife venting to her friends about that, because I do believe that
Right.
I do believe there's this weird thing in society where you're told you're not supposed to talk shit behind somebody's back. I will talk shit about my closest friends behind their back because you need, like, everybody has annoying
Everyone needs
habits.
to.
Well, actually, I do know that some people have talked behind my back, and like it got back to me one time. Like, why are you telling me that they're talking shit about behind my back? Like, they should be free to do that without you coming to me and
Yeah.
telling me about that. Although
Yeah.
I later eventually started I had that person's back at that point, and then later I hated that person. So she ended up being
For
a
other
terrible
reasons.
person, but it was terrible
Oh,
reasons that I was able to find out on my own, not that people
gotcha.
were coming to me and saying that, well, she said I was a phony, which I thought was fucking hilarious because everybody's like, you always act exactly the same around everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, not a phony, but I definitely sound like one. But
Well, I think it says more about her than about you. Not to get into the exact situation. I know
oh
you
yeah,
had it was just an example, but
yeah.
I typically think those kinds of things say more about the people saying it.
But I do think you should be able to vent about absolutely anybody. Everybody should be able to
Yeah.
talk. Everybody should be able to talk behind your friend's back, even if they're your closest friend. You've done everybody's done something stupid. I've done something stupid that's worth talking about and venting about. And like, and it's not always something that like needs to come back to the person. Isn't even always worth like a discussion because of like sometimes maybe it's just like some dumb thing that doesn't matter that just annoys you about the person, but you still want to maintain that friendship. You vent about it, but you don't try to change the person because of they're doing nothing fucking wrong. So like this is
Yeah.
kind of going off topic, but like
No, but I agree with
I
you. Like,
agreed with the wife's standpoint of being able to vent to her husband because she should be able to do that if he's doing. It sounded like innocuous laundry thing is fucking stupid. She should talk to him later, but she should absolutely be able to say her husband's a fucking dumbass and can't fold laundry.
yeah, no, I agree with you, especially in hindsight. Like it was my initial reaction when I saw it, but like even my husband and I, like I ensure that we have people to talk to about each other and that we don't have to share it with each other. Like, hey, you need to have friends to go talk to about me, right? Because I can be a fucking pain in the ass and people need to
Everybody
vent
can.
about me every once in a while. Yeah, everyone can, but especially when you're living with somebody else and so they see all your good, bad, ugly, like all the bad moods and the this little quirks that drive them crazy. Like you really need to have people to talk to about that. The comic hit me the wrong way, and I'd have to look again to remember exactly why. I think
Well,
it was the wording,
well,
but
I think comics have to go. They have so much information to
it's
display in a small amount of
hyperbolized.
way. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's necessarily hyperbolized, but it's missing key details, and especially
yeah,
it's just the comic displaying what the idea is. I'm guessing it's not like a storied comic where, like, if he wanted to talk about Peter Parker's toxic traits or something to Mary Jane, 4 panels wouldn't be enough to encapsulate the whole relationship. But if you're just
Yeah.
getting the concept across, where you don't know the characters and getting to know the characters is an important simple comic showing like the basic idea, I think is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, it also came from a position of not really understanding what it was until we started talking. Because like when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's where he plays stupid." But then, how do you know he's playing stupid? And you can't just assume that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of like
Well, you can assume in
unpacking
the
to do
comic
there.
about it that the guy's
In the
playing
comic, you
stupid.
could because he had that internal thing in his head where he's like, "Yeah, if I just pretend like I don't know how to do something, she'll do it for me." Like it was really blunt and obvious, right? And I think I was just a little bit like, did I get so sick of like bad relationship shit after a while that I guess I get a little bit jaded where it's like, oh my God, fucking people get it together. Like just communicate, just talk. But you are right. Like I want to reiterate that like the being able to vent to people is important. And it's totally off topic too, by the way. But that's okay.
Well, it came on topic with what you were talking about in the comic, and I just wanted to. I took the wife's side in that.
Well, I've got one more place that we can take it, and it's basically in misunderstanding the terms. So when I first saw the term, I thought like, and it was in a broader conversation, and we were talking about like a completely separate topic, and it was something to do with politics, right? And so when I saw the word weaponized incompetence, I thought like, okay, so what is this? Is this where you take somebody else's incompetence and you weaponize it against them? Or is it where you take your own incompetence and it causes injury or causes problems? Like, so for example, like you're incompetent at a job that has like heavy machinery or something, and your incompetence causes other people to get hurt. And I really misunderstood it. So it was funny because I had taken what I had been talking about, saw the words and kind of translated them into it and jumbled it around and came up with these concepts of like, well, what is it about? Like, are you weaponizing, hey, look at this person over here, they're so incompetent, and you're using it against them? So
So did you
I
think it was like I used to drive a forklift when I worked in a warehouse? If I had been really bad at it and was hitting people with the forklift, that could be considered a weapon, and that would be weaponized incompetence because I was doing it
that's
on
a little
accident.
bit that's a little bit like, no, more like so my two thoughts were, because what we were talking about is like fault in the previous conversation. I said it was about politics. I remember now I was wrong. It's about fault. Like who's at fault when this or that happens? And then the weaponized incompetence came up in that conversation directly after. So I'm like, okay, who's at fault? Weaponized incompetence. So are you saying that like they did something wrong and hurt someone, but they're purposely playing dumb? Like, oh, I didn't mean to. Like, so it'd be like you like getting angry at a coworker and hitting them with the forklift and then being like, well, fuck, I was doing the controls and it went left and I thought it was gonna go right. You know, it's like playing dumb. And then the other one was like taking somebody else's incompetence and basically like abusing them with it, or like you stupid fuck or something like that, you know, or taking like an incompetent thing that say uh, a coworker did and using it against them to get promoted up over them or something like that, like spreading it around or using it. So those were the things that I was thinking of
Oh, so like
when I heard the
weaponizing
term.
somebody else's incompetence, like maybe the boss wasn't aware of something incompetent they had done, and
Mm-hmm.
then like promotions coming up, and you're like, she never knew how to work a keyboard until yesterday.
Right, or like the political campaign ads where it's like, say a guy made a bad decision very very early on in a political career like 20 years ago and be like, that person is responsible for like the death of 3,000 people during this flood that happened because they were incompetent getting FEMA going, or you know, whatever. Like taking somebody's incompetence and being like, their incompetence resulted in something bad happening and now I'm going to use it as like defamation,
I mean, I
like character
definitely use the
defamation.
death of 3,000 people against somebody, so I can understand weaponizing that one.
Right. I'm not saying it's always good or bad. Like maybe there's situations where it's good, but that was the
Whoops, I
concept I had.
killed 3,000 people. Sorry.
My examples
I
suck.
guess I guess killing people's just my thing.
Well, I learned my lesson. Well, don't count on me to give good examples, okay?
It was good enough. I got your point across. You just went really far into it, and it almost
I
seemed like
went
it's
dark.
just water under the bridge, which actually it was water over the bridge. That's why those people
It killed
died.
people. Yeah. In wrapping up that point, what I was really meaning was like to tie it into when you hear these terms like for the first time, like weaponized incompetence. It's interesting how what came to my mind was so different from what it actually is. I'm like, so I was having this conversation with Puck and I asked him, I'm like, I need an example. Like, I don't know what this is. And the comic is what he sent me. And I was like, that's so fucking far from what I was thinking. I was thinking like we were talking about fault and responsibility and all this stuff. And I was thinking like how you can use somebody's incompetence against them, or you can use your own like
Well,
quote
that just
unquote
shows how your
incompetence.
devious mind works, and you're always planning to take somebody out. All right, or is that a wrap on probably the shortest episode of Skeptic Hangout yet?
Yeah, I think this is one of those topics that, a lot of times we have topics where it's like, oh, we could keep talking about this for days. This one, maybe not so much. And I think that's okay. But if there's anything we missed, if there's funny examples, if there's serious examples, if anybody has anything to add to the conversation, jump on Facebook and throw it in there and teach us a thing or two about weaponized incompetence.
I mean, I could
And
teach you a thing or two about weaponizing. Well, actually,
don't
just
use
incompetence.
my
My bad.
incompetence against me. There's plenty of it out there to use against me. In addition to hitting up our Facebook page, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And yep, right there somewhere in that vicinity. And thank you guys for joining us. Until next time, keep questioning
Interrogate your
your
beliefs
beliefs.
and stay skeptical.
Yeah. Bye.